Welcome and thanks for joining us. My guest today is Andrew Churchill. He's the Vice President for Federal at Click. Andrew, good to have you with us again.
Great to be here, Tom.
And as agencies pursue data analytics and data analytic platforms, you're finding that there's a desire to go to the cloud, to the FedRAMP certified type of platform for several advantages. And tell us what some of those are.
Yeah, I mean, Tom, we've got over 100 customers in the federal government right now. I mean, the majority of them are running in the cloud. And most of them have moved into infrastructure of a service in one of the major cloud providers. And so the big shift is towards, software as a service. Despite the fact that they've moved to the cloud, and that's given them a, advantage over the challenges of provisioning hardware that they may have experienced in their own on-prem data centers, they're still having to upgrade and patch and do a lot of IT work that really isn't analytics work. So the big push to SaaS, of course, is one, they've got this service wholly contained, managed by the vendor, allowing them to sort of move resources that we're doing security patching, that we're doing upgrades, that we're managing the system rather than the analytics, and move those resources over to analytics work. Overall, the benefits are going to be, okay, we can deliver faster, we can deliver, the best possible capabilities that are out there, and we're going to do it at a lower cost because we're doing it, in mass across a bulk of customers on our platform.
The general trend then is that you don't want to have to maintain the applications for what it is you're actually applying them for. You can spend more time doing analytics, thinking analytically, and less time maintaining the analytical tools that you may have invested in.
Correct. I mean, it's that balance of work has got to shift from doing IT to, we would say doing mission stuff, actually building the analytics and analyzing the data, which is where the value is. Right now in a large mature environment, most of these customers that are running analytics platforms probably have 2 or 3 FTEs just dedicated to managing a system. And that's hard to get away from because they have a lot of obligations for, security compliance, et cetera. With software as a service, 95% of those controls are owned by the vendor. All of the obligations in the event of a security finding owned by the vendor. All of the reporting against those compliance requirements owned by the vendor. So clearly helps them shift much of that cost and that effort over into other areas.
And if you are running different analytic platforms or different applications, say under a given platform, is integration among those and the ability to have them communicate with one another, is that enabled more easily in a FedRAMP type of cloud environment?
Yeah, the cloud is going to be a place where innovation really thrives. It's much easier to integrate with software as a service applications for a number of reasons. Let's start with the applications themselves. Most of these software as a service applications have been built in an API centric type of manner. They're often integrating microservices of their own under the covers, but they're exposing those because they're having to integrate with technologies that are existing either in the same cloud provider that they run in or others or on-prem. But it also, in the federal community, let's face it, some of the challenges of performing integration are the policy and controls that exist for good reason within that enterprise. So now when you have a service that is only loosely, connected to that enterprise, as an ATO granted by that enterprise, as a secure connection to the internet, but the integration is going to become easier. So if I have 6 different tools that I want to combine, maybe underneath the cover of a portal, it's going to be much simpler when I'm doing that in the cloud and really as SaaS types of offerings.
Got it. So that the APIs then can be built into the microservices. Is that the architecture that you're trying to describe?
Yeah, and called more easily. Again, fewer restrictions of, redefining. So, when I'm building a system and ATOing a traditionally built system, I'm having to define all of those connections, how they're working together. Now, here I've got these services that I've ATO'd independently. and becomes much more easy for me to cobble them together. And that, we really do see, the future of analytics being something that's less one-to-one. Okay, I have a user and they're going to go to my product, my Click dashboard, whereas Click will be part of a mashup, a specialized application for logistics or border enforcement, whatever it might be. And we're providing a component of that technology. We are operating as an element of the overall application. And that's the integration that's going to drive forward much greater adoption across many more mission areas beyond just, okay, hey, raise your hand if you want a dashboard. That's a limited audience, but everybody makes decisions, Tom. I mean, in the government, it's a decision type of role, and we need to be able to inform people at all levels of the organization, people that are in the field, people that are sitting at a desk. And I really do think SaaS is going to help move that ball forward.
Yes, because as you mentioned dashboards, everybody's got a dashboard, and a dashboard gives you information, but you can look at it and say, that's interesting, but it's not necessarily actionable. So it sounds like the real challenge with all of this integrated work and in the SaaS environment is to give people actionable intelligence, give them the type of information that a dashboard can't, which is, what do I do about this?
Correct. We've seen, over the last 10 years, the majority of the analytics, really focus on what happened yesterday. What happened yesterday is how many, in what places, and it doesn't really, inform action. And some ways it's the way that it's being built. Some ways it's the data that's available. But for analytics really to be effective, they need to inform action, and they need to do so in a very timely manner. In our commercial sectors, we call it the business moment. I don't know that the mission moment really translates very well, but you have a finite period of time with which to take action. Let's say that you're running logistics, and there's a backup at a depot or a sorting facility, and you need to be able to now be informed with enough time to reroute a shipment to another place. How do you inform a person with enough information to say, okay, this is happening, what are my options, and then take action from that application? And again, that goes into this idea that Click itself, or any analytics vendor itself, is not going to be the method by which they then take action. That is going to be a third-party tool. So it's the ability to integrate that's going to move into these things. And Tom, to take it to the next step, it's even more than integrate, it's automate. Like you look at technologies like RPA and bots in general, where you can now run an analytic that says, if X is between these two values, take this action, and automate that process, where you are now really taking some of that need for a human. So am I going to run humans 24/7 in this role of running this analysis, or can I trust the bots to take on some of these tasks that have low risk, low impact? So that's what we're looking at. We're definitely seeing our customers trend more towards, how do I get more real-time data? That before we get to actionable, before we get to automation, the data that feeds these systems really needs to drive forward beyond a batch load that happened yesterday at 6 a.m. I can't be looking in the rearview mirror trying to understand what I need to do today.
And that can be complicated, though, if agencies, as many of them do, have a multi-cloud hybrid strategy, so that you could have transactions and the resulting generation of data occurring in multiple locations geographically and corporately with different cloud providers. And how do you get over that kind of need for integration?
Yeah, it is definitely setting the table for a big challenge for the enterprise architects out there working in these large federal agencies. I don't think there's any organization that's going to be all living within one of the, single large hyperscalers or cloud providers. They pretty much are going to have workload that, lives in Microsoft, Google, Oracle, and AWS. That just seems to be the standard we're moving towards, as well as, mainframes and some legacy systems that live on, oftentimes in on-prem environments. So, making sure that that data is, holistically available to applications, to analytics, and to business processes is going to be a big challenge. There's a lot of, philosophical debate about the approaches, data mesh, API-based approaches, those type of things. But, ultimately, if you look at the incredible growth of the Snowflakes and Databricks and AWS's data platforms, there's clearly a need for data to get consolidated and be available in a way that's ready for analytics. And we really see an incredible opportunity. We're doing a lot of great work in bringing real-time data from anything from legacy systems or big ERPs like SAP into these environments and trying to reduce that latency down so that it really is that, actionable view. I think this is what you'll see over the next 10 years is the trend, even in places where yesterday's data might be good enough, there's going to be a push towards, more real-time availability.
And a topic on many federal agency managers' lips and a lot of the advisors in this whole area have to do with creating what they call a data culture, a data-oriented culture and analytical culture, so that, as you point out, everyone is making decisions. Everyone should have their decisions based on data or informed by data. And so it strikes me this is a good route to helping to build that data culture when people start to realize that data is available and in a usable form for decision making.
Yeah, and Tom, it is crawl, walk, run, and that's the way that this culture is being built. Crawl was, hey, everybody expected that a report was available to them. Walk, hey, we got to a point where people expected to have access to data. And run is, I think, where we're headed, where they really are going to be, where you are going to push down in the culture an understanding that, yes, Andrew, you can make a decision. You're not the senior most leader in this organization, but we're going to empower you to make decisions in certain domains because the information is available to you and you're a subject matter expert. And I see that's the trend that we're seeing in a lot of places where really it's less so about the Monday morning stand up. That's where all the decisions get made by the senior leader, and more so they're pushing those expectations down. And it's great. It's going to drive it forward. A lot of these conversations would have never happened 3-4 years ago. COVID has been, I guess one of those few silver linings of this, rather tough time in our history is that it brought together CDOs and big important mission owners to really emphasize the use of data for so many different areas of the operation.
Maybe you can give us some examples of federal entities you've seen and come across in your work that are demonstrating their deployment of this type of system.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, biggest organization under the federal umbrella clearly is the Department of Defense, and the Advana program that began under the Office of Secretary of Defense Comptroller and recently moved under the CDAO's office, started by Greg Little and his team. I think is probably one of the greatest success stories of an enterprise data strategy that you'll find out there at both policy, political, and technology. And to watch the demands that were placed on them is a great case study of the expectations. It began with a broadening of use cases. It was accelerated by greater engagement all the way up to the very top of the organizational chain, and then accelerated in terms of expectations of availability of data and the types of analyses that it would support. So when you look at it now, they really are moving towards, they're building out service level agreements for data availability, trying to get below 15 minutes of availability, for example. They are constantly developing new use cases, and the engagement is remarkable. And it really, would it have happened without COVID jumping in? Yes, it would have, but it accelerated it. Probably reduced the time that it took to achieve where we are by 50% or more.
All right. So other organizations that like that idea, what do they need to do to start moving that way?
So, I mean, one I think is engagement. I think the biggest lesson here is that you need participation from across the organization. This is data, analytics and data, data in general is a team sport. It's not an IT function. It's not a business function alone. It's about building cross-functional teams that come together and tackle a problem at a time. Again, I love Advantage just because, again, it's been something we've been involved with from the beginning. Is that they didn't go and they were not the platform for all of DoD to begin with. They began with small things. They solved small problems. They grew it to solve bigger problems, and gained the support along the way. That right there is the recipe in the cloud. Tackle a problem, go find the next one, engage another audience, find commonality across these things, try to find opportunities for reuse, manage the platform. I think that's the other big thing. There's a million tools, and if you sit there and you constantly are asking, well, I want this tool or that tool, do you need every single tool in your portfolio? Is a big question that they've wrestled with. So again, look to those. The other great examples, I think, that are out there. The NIH has done an incredible job building a platform and a consensus around a set of capabilities in a very, very distributed type of management model out there in that organization with all their ICs. They've done a great job as well, and they've got a lot of really solid lessons learned, that many of which have been learned through COVID.
All right. Well, thank you very much. Andrew Churchill is the Vice President for Federal at Click. Thanks for joining us.
Tom, always glad to be on your show.
And I'm Tom Temin. You're listening to Federal News Network. Let's go back to the studio now for more on the Data Industry Exchange.